Pandora. So Pandora is only US based. And what's interesting about that is it was in other countries previously. In another lifetime, I worked in an Apple store in Australia before Apple Music was launched, and Pandora existed there at that time, and that's actually what we were listening to in the Apple store. We were listening to Pandora. And Pandora since stopped operating in other countries, so they're just in the US now. But they still have 60 million monthly listeners that are actively on there listening at this time. And what's great about that is that people outside of the US are not paying attention to Pandora. And I mean, honestly, there's a number of people here that probably aren't. And this is me telling you that you should, because there are some really solid opportunities in there. Pandora is probably one of the platforms where I feel like if you want to say they have customer support, it feels like you actually have someone that cares and you have someone you can talk to. They host 2 webinars every month, and anyone can go in there, plug in links to their music, ask questions. They have a chat button in the bottom right corner in their artist marketing platform, which we'll get to in a second. And they have ways that you can submit your music directly for different features as well. So Pandora's tool is known as AMP, Artist Marketing Platform. You can sign up at amp.pandora.com. Some of the benefits that they have is featured tracks, which we'll get to right now. So you can feature up to 6 tracks per year, 8 weeks per track. What happens when you feature a track is that Pandora will put it in front of more listeners across their radio programming. So a lot of people that listen to Pandora just say, I like these artists, play me music, I don't want to think about it. So these featured tracks will go into that programming and they will actually put it in front of listeners as soon as the next day. You get those streams from that, but they get feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down, and that will help them to see if they serve it to more listeners and if they end up putting it into playlist programming and radio programming. I could tell you from experience with Pandora, radio programming is absolutely killing it compared to playlists. And it's interesting how many people don't pay attention to that because they just assume that it's all about playlists. But featured tracks, there's no sort of limitations apart from the track has to have been released within the last year. It has to have had 10 spins or 10 plays in the last week. And Pandora will happily tell you those 10 plays could come from one person. So there's no reason why you can't get those plays on that track and then make that a featured track. At the very least, you're going to get some streams. It could be a few hundred, and there's stories of artists where it's gone into the hundreds of thousands over those 8 weeks. But at the very least, you're going to get some extra streams just from doing that. And this is a free tool, of course, like everything is. It's provided directly from Pandora. So I make a habit of doing this, and one thing I do is there's a number of projects I'm involved with in different genres of music where I help artists. One of them is a children's music project called Waffle Cakes. And yeah, so it's basically a talking waffle that plays the piano. And no, Waffle Cakes is adorable. But what I do with featured tracks in Pandora is Waffle Cakes dropped a Christmas album. Waffle Cakes dropped a Halloween album. So that comes out, and then the next year, right before that holiday comes back, it's still within those 12 months, I make it a featured track. And surely enough, it goes crazy. So it's a way to breathe some extra life into those tracks within that first year. And definitely worth clicking. I mean, I think it's 4 clicks to do it. They just say, pick an album, pick a track from that album, pick a start date, submit, and that's it. And then the next day, sometimes 2 days, you get an email saying, featured track has started, more people are going to hear it now. The next week, you can see those streams in Pandora. This next feature that we have here is track reporting. It's one of the newer features they added. Essentially, you can see all of the streams across your entire catalog. So a lot of people have said for a long time, I don't know how I'm doing on Pandora or how any of my tracks have done over time. This will show you how many streams you're getting, where they're coming from. Is it radio? Is it playlists? Is it people going directly to your profile and pressing play? So once again, as I mentioned, radio on Pandora is bigger than playlists. So obviously playlists, everyone can see that. You can take a screenshot, but radio is where you're going to see more streams on Pandora. A lot of people say it's passive listening. They just put it on and they let it play.
Do you think that the radio feature on Spotify is similar to the one on Pandora? Okay, so you're going to get more plays if you're on radio than a playlist?
It's getting there, absolutely. Until about a month ago, Spotify had a separate app called Stations.
Yeah.
They did a terrible job telling people about it. So when they announced that it was gone, people were like, what? But that was their way of trying to replicate what Pandora does really well, which is, I like these artists, I like this track. I personally enjoyed it because I would create a station in that app based on my release radar, and I just have a day full of new music, and as opposed to 30 or so tracks. But now what they've done is they've brought that back within the Spotify app. So they are doing a big push on radio. To add to that, Amazon actually have a separate app called AMP, not to get confused with Pandora, but Amazon have an app called AMP where anyone can open the app, host their own live radio show directly within the app, and play music from that library. It's all cleared, it's all licensed, all the music that's in there, so you won't get any takedowns. And you can actually talk back to listeners that have the app as well. But yes, so Amazon do have a strong focus on radio, and Apple as well. And I don't have exact numbers, but I will share that with Waffle Cakes, there's a number of editorial playlists on Apple Music, but they've delivered maybe 250,000 streams. Whereas on Apple Music Radio, we're at 8 million streams for children's music, which is really fun and really cool. And that's because people are going and putting on a lullaby radio station, whatever it takes to keep the kids out. Let it play all night. They have it going 24/7. And there's a lot of that happening with all of these apps now. People are just saying, I don't want to pick a playlist. I just want dance music non-stop. And if I don't like a song, I'll skip it. So stations are still very important, and I would argue that they're delivering more streams because people are actually just putting their complete trust in that and letting it go. Whereas a playlist, people listen to a few songs and they decide if they like it or not from there. The other thing is, if people are having a party at their house, they don't want to put on a playlist that may just stop after a couple of hours. So yeah, once again, all of these pitch forms, you're putting your music up for consideration for radio programming as well as playlists. It's just a lot of people don't really see the radio programming and don't realize how many of us are actually listening to that, and it's actually delivering more streams. So another thing in Pandora is you can have a artist audio message, which is essentially a voice message that you can record, you can upload, and it will play before or after your song. So when people are in Pandora, they've just heard your song, you can say like, hey, it's Drew, just letting you know that tonight I'm playing in downtown San Diego at this venue. And you can actually include a link on the screen, and you can say, tap the link on your screen to get tickets. And so you can directly talk to fans right after they've heard your music. I've seen other people do it where they'll say, I've got to play, if you like what you've just heard, I've got a playlist with all of my original music. Tap the button on the screen to listen to that now. And so you can direct them where you would like with your voice and with a message on the screen with a link that they can tap. So people have used this to sell merch, sell tickets, direct them to your playlist, try and encourage them to follow you. There's a number of different uses for this. The next thing here that I wanted to share is Pandora actually have some pretty strong tools if you like curating in addition to just putting out your own music and onto Pandora. So what I've done is I've created a number of Pandora stations and playlists myself. And you can see on the screen here, they provide a number of things. They show you what's the average listening time that people will actually listen to what you've created for. In this case, we can see it's over 6 hours on average. We can see the total number of spins on that, as well as how many people have listened. So I've seen people do this with different genres. I've seen people do this with lo-fi, with dance music, with a very specific genre within dance music as well. And the good thing about this is that it will let you create a station and a playlist at the same time. So you're reaching people no matter how they choose to listen. The other good thing about this is that they don't just stop there. They actually give you an understanding of who's listening. So, gender, location, device that they're listening on as well. And this is a good understanding. If you have a playlist of all your own music, how many people are listening? Where are they based? You have 500 people listening in the last month in LA. That's good to know. And then where it gets really interesting, if you like being a curator, is they actually have skip rates for your stations and playlists. So if people are listening to your playlist or station and they're getting to a certain song and they're skipping, you're going to see a high number of skip rates, which basically means they skipped within the first 30 seconds. And completion rate means that they listen to more than 75% of the track, essentially. So one example, I had a playlist and there was a song that related to a specific holiday that had long passed, and I saw this high level of skip rates in there, and I went, what's going on? I thought this was a good track. And then I went in and listened, and I realized, there's bells jingling and all this. I remove that, and straight away, the average listening length of that playlist went up, and there was no other skip rates anywhere near that. So it's a good way of understanding where are people tuning out and why. And so, they actually break this down by day as well. So, I was able to work out that, there wasn't skip rates at this time, but later on there was a significant amount of skip rates on that playlist. And so this is not done in the Pandora app itself. This is actually done in their artist marketing platform. What you need to do is you need to actually fill out a request form and say that you would like to sign up for Pandora Stories, is what they call it. Essentially, this is an extra tool that will then open up in the artist marketing platform where you can toggle between artist and curator, and you can start creating stations and playlists. You can create them as the artist, or you can create them as yourself, or even a brand as well, or record labels. I've seen record labels do this too. So I would encourage you to do that, because one thing I've found is that it's very easy if you've got something that's well curated and people are looking for it on Pandora, they're not favoring editorial over user-created playlists and stations. So if I create a playlist called Chill House, it's likely that if it's actually good and there's a lot of good chill house music in there, people are going to listen to that and the numbers will jump up very quickly.